Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Church of Evanston. Whether this is your spiritual home or you are newly discovering this community, we are grateful you are with us. We are an inclusive and welcoming community, seeking truth in love and striving to nurture the human spirit for a world made whole. We are guided by our principles and values, which remind us in every moment and through every challenge that each of us is worthy of love and that we are all connected through the vast and beautiful web of existence. We come together to remember our kinship with one another and to hold one another in heart and mind with tenderness and careful attention. There are many links of connection in the description below of the YouTube live stream, in the description below of the YouTube live stream, including the order of service credits, ways to support our mission, and to be added to our email newsletter list. If you are in the sanctuary, we encourage you to use the QR code found on the hymnal cards for the digital order of service, or to take one of the large print orders of service we have on the table near the sanctuary doors. There are listening assistance devices there as well. Hymnals are available for anyone to use. A few announcements. What has been your experience of oppression and equity at UCE? The Anti-Oppression Task Force would like to know. They've worked with the YWCA Equity Institute to create a survey. You can find a link to the survey in the newsletter or on the UCE website. You'll also find posters in the lobby and back of the sanctuary with a QR code that will link you to the survey. It takes about 20 minutes to complete on a smartphone, tablet, or computer. Members of the Anti-Oppression Task Force will be available during fellowship hour to answer questions and provide paper copies of the survey for those who prefer the paper and pen format. If you've already completed the survey, stop to get an I completed the equity survey sticker to wear. Your participation will help us understand how to transform the Unitarian Church of Evanston into a place of radical hospitality and inclusion. We hope to expand power sharing and ownership of our anti-oppression work, as well as create spaces that provide safety and support for those with marginalized identities. Reverend Susan and Reverend Eileen want to invite you to join them on September 2nd for a special program featuring photographer Joseph Kane, discussing his photos, which will be on display in our lobby, along with Indigenous educator and enrolled member of the Forest Band of Potawatomi, Starla Thompson. Starla will share with us about land acknowledgements, building accountable relationships, centering Indigenous voices, and understanding the history of our land. Joseph uses a rare antique process called wet plate collodion tintype to photograph Indigenous people, many of whom choose to sit in their native dress. The Unitarian Church of Evanston resides on the traditional homelands of the Council of Three Fires, the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations. In 1829, this land was recorded as being transferred from the local Potawatomi community, who had no choice but to sell their land to the U.S. government before being forcefully removed west of the Mississippi River. This land was then sold to white settlers. The Chicago area is now home to one of the largest and most diverse urban Native communities in the U.S. The acknowledgement of this land's history is one small effort toward building long-term solidarity with contemporary indigenous communities. We name these realities with honor for all the ancestors and with respect for our descendants, with gratitude for the animals and plants sustained by this land, and with deep appreciation for the land we use as sacred space. As the Anti-Oppression Task Force lights our chalice, symbol of our living tradition, please join in saying these words. We light this chalice as a beacon of hope in difficult times. We light this chalice as a reminder of the possibility of transformation in every moment. We light this chalice to ignite power out of remnants and trash. We light this chalice to create beauty out of struggle. Please rise in body and or spirit and join us in saying the words of our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Before we sing our opening hymn, let's turn to one another briefly to say good morning. Try to greet someone sitting near you, but whom you don't know yet. Please remain standing for the hymn. The hymn is number 326, Let All the Beauty We Have Known, verses 1 and 2.
Thank you, Kathy. And thank you, Betty, for being a part of this service. It's been really fun this last month to be collaborating with folks and talking about art. And I want to thank and welcome our guest cellist, Eric Powers, for being here today. So glad you're here. Each Sunday, we hold space for the joys and sorrows of those gathered here, honoring the struggles and the triumphs, the brokenness and wholeness that is part of the human condition. If you have a joy or a sorrow that you'd like spoken aloud, you can write it in the book at the back of the sanctuary, submit it through the Google form found on the homepage of our website, or simply send me or Reverend Susan an email. These are the joys and sorrows that have been shared today. A joy from the sanctuary cooling team and the garden team. The generosity of those who contributed to the capital campaign has resulted in the installation of a new garden on the north side of our building. You probably noticed it when you came in. As part of the sanctuary cooling project, we committed to the city, our neighbors, and our congregation to conceal the condensers and improve the landscaping. We are very pleased with Nature's Perspectives, creativity, and the results. Thank you all. Thanks to all who put that together. From Carla Williams, UC Board President, a joy from the board's work, board's work during our retreat this weekend. It was meaningful, productive, and fun. I am grateful for this wonderful team of leaders, and we do have a very wonderful team of leaders on our board and throughout the congregation. From Kristen Lems, 2 days ago, a remarkable human being known to anyone in folk music around Chicago died. Jewel Ulvin, I'm hoping I said that right. I'm looking for Kristen. Yes, good. Jewel Ulvin, founder of the Fox Valley Folk Festival and Fox Valley Folklore Society, died from long COVID connected to lymphoma. He was a real jewel. Rock solid, reliable, friendly to all, and super smart on both left and right brain sides. Folklorist, folk singers, and fans of both will miss him forever. From Erlene Howard, please hold my sister Leslie and the rest of our family as we grieve the passing of my brother-in-law, Paul. From Christine Peters, Jordan Strieber is back in the hospital for nearly a week now. They are being evaluated by neurologists given their pain and difficulty walking. Jordan will be discharged again to skilled nursing for PT-OT. They could really benefit from support from our caring congregation. If you can send a text or a card, that is most appreciated. This sacred space for our tender offerings is part of the practice of beloved community. Together we expand our celebrations and we lessen the burden of our grief. If you are invited to come forward now and light a candle, if there is a joy or a sorrow on your heart that is too tender to share aloud, but that you would like to recognize, please come forward now. And if you would like me to bring you a candle, please raise your hand. Let us say together, for these joys we give our thanks, for these sorrows we give our love. Please join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation. Spirit of life, source of love, beautiful mystery of creation. We are grateful for beloved community and the chance to gather together holding one another in collective care. We recognize the many struggles and the suffering that are real here in this room, for those of us joining in community online, and for those beyond the reach of this prayer. May we have the courage to face our struggles and the struggles of those we encounter with compassion and care. May our hurts soften our hearts to one another and strengthen our resolve to ease one another's pain. We pray for the guidance and the fortitude to participate in whatever ways we can in the co-creation of peace and liberation for all beings. Open our minds, Spirit of life, to the abundance of joy and beauty around us, and make us ever mindful of holding both suffering and joy in our view with reverence. Amen.
As we say in our covenant each Sunday, service is our law. UCE is called by our mission, values, and principles to contribute to our community, to form accountable partnerships, and to express gratitude through giving. Today's offerings will be shared with the Interfaith Action of Evanston, which brings people of diverse faiths and shared values together to serve hungry and homeless people, pursue interfaith dialogue, and engage in advocacy that promotes social justice. If you are joining us from home or in the building, you may text to give, mail in a check, or give from our website. If you write a check, please indicate in the memo line if your check is for the shared offering, pledge, capital campaign, or some other giving. If you're in the sanctuary, the ushers will pass the collection bowls down the rolls. Will the ushers please come forward? Please give as generously as you are able, and may what you give bring you joy. When I was a child, during what those of my generation still call the war, this image began appearing in battlefields all over Europe. I was 10 years old when the war ended, and I don't recall ever having heard or seen the word graffiti during those years, but I was certainly aware of the image, seen in newsreels and in print media. The origin of the name Kilroy is unclear, but this meme inscribed on a wall or fence functioned as a morale booster for troops landing on a beachhead. The message, "Kilroy was here," from an advanced reconnaissance team proclaimed, "We were here, we prevailed, and we lived to tell the tale." It must have been especially heartening if it happened to be painted on the side of a missile penetrating into enemy territory. The word graffiti usually translates as writing, but the Oxford English Dictionary, using the archaeological singular graffito, defines it as a scratch. It dates back to ancient times when images were scratched or incised on walls, and Kilroy was here is certainly a modern example, a message scratched on or drawn on a wall. Graffiti have been found in the ruins of Pompeii and Ephesus in modern-day Turkey, and at ancient sites all over the world, such as the 5th century citadel of Sigiriya in Sri Lanka, the Mayan site of Chikai in Guatemala, Newgrange Mound in Ireland, and the Hagia Sophia in Constantinople, among many others. The sample here is from the ancient Kum Ombo Temple in Egypt. Messages ranged from declarations of love and praise of particularly beautiful prostitutes to political rhetoric and literary quotes, and they've contributed to the understanding of lifestyles and languages of past cultures. There are also examples of graffiti occurring in American history, such as Independence Rock, a national landmark along the Oregon Trail. French soldiers carved their names on monuments during the Napoleonic campaign of Egypt in the 1790s, and Lord Byron's message survives on one of the columns of the Temple of Poseidon in Attica, Greece. Modern graffiti in the US has been linked to the hip-hop movement and street gang culture. As it has been throughout history, it is written or drawn on a wall in a public place and without permission, and as such, it is generally considered by property owners and civic authorities to be vandalism and punishable as a crime. This example of a wall in Chicago shows the type of graffiti that is disturbing to the neighbors as it displays gang rivalries and is used to mark territorial and ideological borders. Many cities have taken drastic, expensive, and largely unsuccessful steps to prevent and eradicate graffiti. For instance, in Chicago, spray paint and large markers may not be legally sold, but this hasn't noticeably decreased the practice. The paint and markers are widely available in the surrounding suburbs, and so the creations, many of them highly decorative, continue to appear all over town. In New York, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority has tried various methods over the years to clean up the trains, which were so thoroughly covered you couldn't see through the windows. They used a chemical solution sprayed by high pressure water cleaners and security systems to protect the depots. When the graffiti writers continued to evade detection by visiting stationary cars at night, the MTA installed barbed wire fences separated by a corridor patrolled by guard dogs. Despite all this effort, my son tells me that on his most recent trip to New York, he saw trains graffitied inside and out. Here's a graffiti train, Looks like the windows on this one were left untouched. Meanwhile, graffiti artists were developing in skill and sophistication, and art lovers and academics began to take notice. In 1972, a sociologist at the University of New York organized with the United Graffiti Artists a crew to present the first canvas exhibition of graffiti at the Razor Gallery, which paved the way for legitimating graffiti as an art form. Young artists were invited by gallery owners to display their work on canvas, and around the world, graffiti art began to be recognized for its beauty as well as its messages, and communities were making space for them. Here are a few examples. This one is a wall in Jakovic, Croatia, apparently telling a story and signed by the artist. This red bird-like figure, a work in progress by an artist named Buari, was photographed at a signing festival in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. This image in Yogyakarta, Indonesia, is both startling and decorative and may also be conveying a political message. In Casperdown, Australia, a political message, "You are partying on stolen land," is superimposed on a starkly geometrical but decorative background. The words might have been ripped from the news in the USA. And here's an artist working on a project at a Euro festival in Finland. Graffiti has always been an art form of the poor, and artists use whatever medium is available. Here's a beautiful example seen in India. The materials are mostly charcoal, plant saps, and dirt. In San Francisco, a tunnel was made available for graffiti art. Tagging is a more recent practice of someone spraying their name or logo on a public surface, sometimes so fancifully as to be virtually unreadable. This example reads "spore." More recently, hashtags are sometimes used. After the George Floyd murder, his name and face began appearing on walls in Chicago, along with Black Lives Matter images and other emphatic messages. These examples are arresting as well as decorative. That one is not so clear, but many prominent graffiti artists maintain their anonymity in order to avoid detection and prosecution. Perhaps the most famous and at the same time mysterious is Banksy, who is also a political activist and filmmaker. He's thought to be from Bristol, UK, and practices mainly in London, although his work has been seen all over the world. His documentary, Exit Through the Gift Shop, made its debut at the Sundance Film Festival in 2010 and was nominated for an Academy Award. Here's a Banksy quote. "Imagine a city where graffiti wasn't illegal, a city where everybody could draw whatever they liked, where every street was awash with a million colors and little phrases, where standing at a bus stop was never boring, a city that felt like a party, where everyone was invited, not just the estate agents and barons of big business. Imagine a city like that, and stop leaning against the wall. It's wet." Oops.
This week I took some time to finally hang some of the art that's been placed around my office this week. I took down the giant ibis painting that I've been staring at for 3 years in front of my desk and hung some smaller pieces above that place. Some of it's my artwork, others I was given as gifts over the years, and I bought 2 pieces from the rummage sale. All of it brings me joy. Even looking at my own work, which I do with a highly critical eye, I appreciate seeing and thinking about the process of creating the piece and remembering what it felt like to be in the zone, to be in the moment. Art, whether we're creating it or appreciating it, allows us to lose ourselves and find ourselves at the same time. It can help us discard what we no longer need and reclaim what has true value. Art connects us to each other and communicates what words alone cannot. Like religion and science, art helps us make meaning in our lives. Unitarian Universalism welcomes both art and science as necessary companions to the religious experience and our spiritual journeys. All 3 can help us better understand ourselves and the world we inhabit. Each of us, each of you, are artists. We're all co-creators of this world, and each of us uses a variety of materials to create meaning and beauty, to express ourselves and challenge assumptions. In the past year, I've been able to visit 2 extraordinary exhibits here in Chicago that demonstrate the power of art to express important themes about identity, oppression, colonization, and materialism using reclaimed and reimagined medium. Last summer, I saw the exhibit of Bisa Butler's work at the Art Institute before it closed. For those of you who didn't have a chance to see it, she creates stunning and intricate quilts that are colorful reproductions of black and white photographs. Her first quilt portrait featured her grandparents, Frances and Violet, and then she began collecting vintage photographs of people with marginalized identities, people in the African American community primarily, people she didn't know but who reminded her of her family members. This is a photograph which does not do it justice of one of her pieces called I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. So much detail, little scraps of fabric and ribbon and stitching that create beautiful replications. When I visited the exhibit, I was struck by the artist's words describing quilting and fabric work as a traditionally marginalized medium. I learned to sew as a teenager, and I had never thought of fabric this way, as a traditionally marginalized medium, but of course it makes sense. Throughout enslavement and the oppression that followed and continues, Black people have been denied access to so many resources, including forms of creative expression, yet those who have been denied basic rights and dignities, who have been attempted to be erased, have always found ways to make beauty out of the material available, as Betty was describing, and to claim their identity. Bisa Butler's work honors the resourcefulness and resilience of Black women and men to defy erasure and create beauty out of limited resources, elegance and dignity from the materials at hand, joy out of suffering. Literally, out of whole cloth, she creates magnificent and vibrant pieces with subjects in regal poses, imbued with power. She reclaims this humble medium and makes it rich and splendid. The second exhibit that really knocked my socks off is currently at the Museum of Contemporary Art, and I highly recommend, if you can get there, to do it. Nick Cave is a Chicago-based artist who has been prolific for the last 3 decades. Like Bisa Butler, he takes everyday, often discarded materials and reimagines them into breathtaking pieces. He takes what some might call junk and draws out profound meaning and beauty. In his words, he is, quote, looking at surplus and the excess of stuff that we're surrounded by and reusing it, reclaiming it. Nick Cave's exhibit is called For Othermore, which the exhibit description says, quote, reflects Cave's lifelong commitment to creating space for those who feel marginalized in society, especially queer people, the working class, and people of color. Through his exuberant celebratory works, Cave helps us imagine a more inclusive future together, one where everyone feels at home in their body and the world. As you enter the space, there are hanging hundreds of these gleaming and twirling lawn ornaments that one might find at a thrift shop or buy from a street vendor. I imagine he might have found some of them on the ground and polished them up and placed them ever so carefully so they playfully interacted with the light and with each other. Imagine these all spinning and sparkling. One of my favorite parts of the exhibit is a series with ceramic dogs sitting on thrones. It's hard to see, but there is I don't know what kind of dog it is, but sitting on that throne, a ceramic dog, surrounded by a decadent canopy of tchotchkes. Ceramic birds and flowers interlaced through bronze branches. It's incredible. Again, from the description on the wall, Cave imbues reclaimed materials and objects with an unmistakable respect, giving lost objects new meaning through the kind of reverential treatment typically reserved for statues, memorials, and historic artworks. Dogs are symbols of loyalty and faithfulness, yet they are also often mistreated, discarded, or lost. Again, he's repeating the theme of taking what is misaligned or cast aside and giving it honor and respect. That is the power of art. To reclaim what is lost, to make beautiful what systems of power may deem worthless or ugly, and to shine a light of truth on what is often seen as less than whole. Cave is most well known for his sound suits, which combine sculpture and costume and dance and sound. He created his first sound suit after the Rodney King beating by Los Angeles police and their subsequent acquittal. As a Black man, he felt deep grief and anger about the disregard for Black life. He felt his life was also in danger of being seen as disposable. In his grief, sitting in a park, he looked down at a stick on the ground, a discarded thing, and he began to collect sticks and create an enormous sculpture which could be worn as a suit. It was, quote, a means of obscuring his identity as a Black queer man for protection while paradoxically amplifying his radical otherness. There's a person in there. You can move around in that thing. This first sound suit evolved into an enterprise involving many hands and countless found objects built into incredible creations. Go and look up, there's a video of him, in all of these suits and parades and things. It's unbelievable. Wearing these suits allows the dancer to lose themselves and feel shielded at the same time. This is a photograph from the exhibit, and you can see there's all of these different sounds. This is just a sampling of the hundreds that he has, and they all contain different objects, buttons, and he's got one with globes and these weird plastic toys that you'd find at a yard sale or something. And then he's got ones that have this raffia kind of fabric, just like a big giant animal, and it makes all this shh shushing sound when they move in it. And the other thing I want to point out is on that back wall, as you can see on the left, that is a wall, probably as big as this wall, of pony beads, those little plastic beads that are ubiquitous, laced through shoelaces and forming this gigantic net. Just like blows my mind how much time that would have taken to make that. But anyway, I could go on and on. But I'm so grateful for the opportunities to see these two exhibits. And we're so fortunate to live in a place where there is so much art just available, places to access it. As Betty reminded us, real art, is everywhere. And it has incredible power to challenge us to see in different ways, to consider what is beautiful and what has value in our lives. What do we cast aside and what do we lift up as worthy of our attention? And how can we reclaim what really matters? The finished product is only part of the value of art. It is the process of creation and the communication between artist and observer where the true purpose and power lies. Perhaps the next time you see a discarded object on the ground, a stick or a broken piece of pottery, a lost lawn ornament, the next time you see a spray of colorful graffiti on the wall, ask yourself where it came from. Out of what did it arise? Who made this thing and what is its value? What does it communicate? Oh, and if anybody would like to reclaim and repurpose a discarded ibis painting, you can see me after the service. May our minds and hearts be open to being co-creators of meaning. May we reclaim the power and value of creative expression, which is our birthright. May we, through all of the resources and materials at our disposal, continue creating and sharing beauty and meaning in our lives. Amen.
As we extinguish the chalice, please join in saying these words by the Reverend Elizabeth Sell Jones. Though the flame is extinguished, with the warmth of community, the light of truth, and the fire of commitment, until we are together again. Please rise in body or spirit and join in singing hymn number 1028, The Fire of Commitment.
making peace, reclaiming beauty, and finding power and purpose in what has been discarded. Blessings.